All right. Well, welcome everyone. I know this says a training session. It kind of is a training session, but I would say it's more of an informational session. As many of you are aware, and others that are also on the call, I know have been part of this development of the digital delivery and CAD manual over the past year. So really what today is we want this to be interactive. So if you do have questions and you want to pop it in the chat, please do so. If you have another question, just raise your hand. We'll call on you as we go through this. I imagine there will be a few questions. This is something that is a little bit newer. We revamped the old manual that was 2011 and really kind of updated based on the new software and the new processes and procedures that are being done through CDOT as well as the industry. So with that, kind of the best way to start, I think, with this is why this new manual. As I stated, the last one was 2011, so it catered more towards that software, how we develop plans, deliverables, different things that way, and kind of how things have progressed over the years. So what this manual does, it introduces not only the new CAD standards and the updated CAD standards that you all have been working with on some of these, but also the introduction to digital delivery or digital design and delivery, really moving that forward. So with that said, I'd like to kick off just starting. We're going to go over chapters 1 and 2 with folks. I'm not going to just go through and read it. It's really to hit it from a high level, give everyone information on what chapter 1 is about, that overview of the manual, and then really diving into chapter 2, probably a little bit more in depth of the document management piece, just because of how we develop our design models from the different design criteria, how that evolves and how that data is related to those different files now versus having separate data from a separate graphic file. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start into chapter 1. So when, and I'll zoom into this in a minute so you guys can see it a little bit better. But once you get the manual at the end of the day, that initial draft, we're planning on submitting. That will be that deliverable will be submitted to CDOT at the end of June. So once that's submitted, we'll be working with Sahara on how that gets distributed to all of the regions, to the entire state for use. And Sahara, you correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're trying to do with that first manual from that initial release is really get people to start become familiar with it, start using it, start giving feedback, start asking questions, so that we can update the manual to make sure that it is fitting the needs of CDOT and what you guys are wanting to use it for.
That's correct. This is the first iteration, first shot on what we think it should include. Once ongoing training, we will be providing more training, more specific topic as we go and piloting, and then we'll assess that and we'll reflect the lesson learned into future updated ones. So it's going to be like more than one iteration, I believe, to the CAD manual before it published as a manual for implementing the process of design digital deliverables. So,
and one thing to mention too is many of you are aware, some may not be, but this definitely was not done in a vacuum with just HDR working on it. This was done with, we had at least two representatives from each region, based from roadway, drainage, traffic, bridge, and other specialty groups. So we really tried to make sure that we were getting the information back from the regions and for the state, so that this was a comprehensive manual, and there was a lot of input from the regions to help us develop that, as well as contractors. We also had contractors on here to help us out. And also, just you guys see Bob on the call here. Envision CAD as well helped develop this. As you all know, they've been doing a lot of work on the workspaces with Sahara and for CDOT and for you all. So we really took this to heart of making sure that people were involved and that it wasn't just done in a vacuum and not taking any input from anyone. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood that. So as you get the manual, you're going to have each chapter. The manual will be comprised in itself. And what you'll see is probably like chapters 1 through, there's 6 chapters, and then there's an appendix of, I think, about 6 different elements, like plan examples, project delivery checklists, model attributes, different things like that, model progression spreadsheets. And we'll get into those things at the end of June before we do release the manual itself. We're going to have a high-level overview of all of the different chapters. So with this one, I'm going to dive into chapter 1. So as you can see on the side there, you will have all the bookmarks available to you. And you will also have not only those available, but, and I'll zoom in now. So each chapter in the manual itself is going to have that table of contents. And in the table of contents, these are all going to be live linked. So you'll be able to just click on those. It'll take you to where you need to go. Hey, I'm interested in this. I really want to know about these things. So it's going to be it should be pretty user friendly for you all. So I would say, even as you're going through that, if you see things, oh, hey, this link isn't working, it's not taking me to where I need to go, to make sure that you provide that feedback to us so that we can get that fixed. One thing we are trying to stay away from is within the manual, the table of contents and those items will be linkable within the manual, but any links that go outside of the manual, like to the CDOT website or any information directed to that, will provide a static link that basically tells you where to go that you can get to, and probably a direct link to like the CDOT website, and then how to navigate to that, because of the broken links that happen throughout development of manuals, just because things get moved around here and there. All right, so I'm going to start off with the introduction to the overall manual. So what this is, and again, I'm not going to read everything. This is going to be for you guys to do when you get it. But why the manual? And it's really I always talk about consistency, repeatability, consumable, and uniformity. So if anything, please remember those 4 words. That's really, this manual is to provide information from not only a data information standpoint, but also just a standpoint of far as standards, of how standards are established and go. Because if we can be consistent with those and we can be repeatable with those, it's easier to consume on the back end, and we have a uniformity of all of our information that we're trying to pull together. So that's really the biggest part of this whole thing from an overview, is that you're going to see in the middle here, we have policy. And with policy, so we have a lot of information around the outside, again, of like purpose and need. What is the project about? What are we going to be using through this manual to help us through the purpose and need? What are we responsible for? What are we not responsible for? Really providing like the best practices. And again, that consistent, repeatable, deliverable. That way the regions are uniform across the state, and it makes it easier for the state and each region to really be able to collaborate with each other, as well as that deliverable at the end of the day. And fire alarm in 15 minutes. Good to know. Thank you. So at the end of the day, when it's delivered to the contractor, whether that's an electronic deliverable or a digital design deliverable, even for information only, it's consistent. The contractor knows what to expect from the state versus different things. So that's really what the policy is kind of behind it, are those types of things, developing what's going into that project deliverable and being delivered at the end of the day. The intended audience for this. So there's a few boxes here. Basically, the intended audience for this is all the way from the beginning of how are we planning our project to how are we getting our project to an asset. For instance, like even SIMSA, utilizing SIMSA for the bridges, utilizing Point Man for utilities. How are we starting our project from the very beginning? What's the plan of the project? What are we actually doing? And all the way through construction to that piece. That's what the intended audience is for. So really it's for everyone on the project. It's not just for a specific person. It's not for a specific specialty group. It's for everyone on that project. However, whatever that project is, it may pertain to a specialty group, but it also is anyone in that specialty group and moving forward. So that's what the intended audience for this manual is, really everyone. So we want to make sure that everyone has access to this and uses this as much as you do your specification books, the roadway design guide, different things like that, your field manuals. We want this to be part of your everyday workflows. So that's really kind of the purpose of the manual as well, with the intended audience that I just kind of covered, really going through that. And the reasons, again, is it's that consistent, repeatable information. The more that we are on, that everyone is on the same page, delivering the same type of work, the easier it's going to be at the end of the day for that deliverable. Probably get better bids, different things like that. So the reason for that, the manual really is to develop the standards to be used, not only from a CAD standpoint, but from that digital design standpoint. What kind of information is going into those models? How far are we taking that model-based design information? How are we utilizing BIM? How are we utilizing building information modeling for the project itself? So
Jeremy,
again,
from the chat, do you have a link available to download the manual in this shown in the screen?
Not yet. Not yet. Next month, I'll send you the link next month.
and it'll be the whole thing, not just each chapter by itself. It'll be similar to the roadway design guide, where I think you have, if I remember right, you have a download for the entire manual, and then you have a download for each chapter itself, if you want to do it that way too. So kind of back to the purpose, we do go through letting and procurement just at a high level, talking about from our design standpoint all the way through the procurement with quantities and costs and how that moves forward. Getting into construction really, and talking about, sorry, I don't know why my screen is not working very well. Really the construction part, what we've done is we've identified and defined, and again, this was done with the regions, it was also done with contractors so that we could define those different types of deliverables. Most of this manual, and as you'll see and you'll read through here, most of it is defined based on the design build project. There are many elements that offer towards design build, CMGC, alternative delivery mechanisms as well. So we really tried to define what those are within this chapter from a construction standpoint, and then moving on to the operations and maintenance, and then the assets as well. What are we doing from an assets stage side of things? We do have an entire chapter at the end of the manual, which is chapter 6, which is just on asset management, but it describes and talks about what asset management is. It's more, again, of an informational chapter of where we're trying to get to, where the industry is really kind of moving and how, what the benefits are for the state. And when we do asset information, how we're doing it and making it efficient and easy to use and easy to find. So really that's kind of what that chapter is really starting to develop those elements for the project. So the manual environment review. So really what this is the environment, meaning CAD standards, the project standards, and the digital design standards. So CAD standards, that being file naming conventions, the workspace that you all are using, from level naming, textiles, that type of thing, as far as even the design and the drafting of the manual itself. And that CAD standards, that'll be chapter 3. So again, end of June, we'll go through all the chapters. We'll go through the outline more in detail. The project design standards. So the criteria, utilizing the roadway design guide, utilizing AASHTO, what that criteria is and how that fits together. The roadside design guide as well. Really using the design criteria is what that project design standards we talk about through that, with that environment overview, and how that correlates and relates to CAD standards and the digital standards. So digital standards being that model-based environment of when we talk about level of development, level of information need, that'll be in chapter 4 as we move. Again, we'll dive deeper into those elements and at the end of June in that last meeting. But with the project digital standards, as I mentioned, the model base, but also as that goes through what information is in there, how it's developed, how we're using it, how we're developing our design and our models that are being used for PDF deliverables, for information only model-based deliverables in that hybrid world right now. So that's really what that environment review will be once you dive into that. This last part here is going to be really kind of talking about, it's just going through that menu, the ORD menu bar that CDOT has worked with Bentley and others on. I think EnvisionCAD was involved with this as well, to really help provide a singular spot for people to go to on what their needs are if they run into issues utilizing software and deliverables, or having crashes and maybe things aren't opening right, things like that, as well as information and use of Bentley themselves, utilizing the coffee corner workshops. I don't know if people have been using those, the YouTube channels, which is also on there as well, in your Mojo help desk. And then it's got direct links. So really utilize this. I don't know how many people are using it or not using it. But this is something that I find very beneficial when working in that environment. So this just kind of explains what those are from a high level standpoint for folks that may not be as familiar with it. So how to use the manual. So this is probably one of the bigger parts to talk about. Again, I'm not going to go through every objective and everything that we are utilizing it for. But for instance, one of the main things is roles and responsibilities of the project. So we know we all have roles and responsibilities, regardless of, are we doing digital design? Are we doing CAD standards? Am I filling out one of the forms? Am I doing a NEPA document? Am I pulling together a structural selection report? We all have roles and responsibilities and what those are for. What this is trying to do is, on this how to use manual, if I want to know about roles and responsibilities from a CAD standard standpoint, from a digital delivery standpoint, from just a deliverable standpoint, you can see we have chapters in here and we have target audiences. So we have chapters 2 through 6. Well, the whole manual is 1 through 6. So this manual is intended to be used as a manual. It's not intended to, oh, I just want to know about CAD standards, so I'm going to chapter 3. It's a very integral manual of where you're going to have to utilize all the different chapters together to really have a good, again, uniformity and a consistent methodology on how we are designing, how we are modeling, and how we are moving forward. So with defining roles and responsibilities, the objective that I'm using here, that third one down, you'll see in the target audience, we have project manager, project model manager, or many model managers. And those we get into on roles and responsibilities a little bit more so in the other chapters, in chapters 3, chapters 4, chapters 5. But think of, so project manager is project manager across the board. The project model manager. So what that is that's also kind of like a project engineer. So the way to kind of think about some of those things is that could be your project engineer. It could be someone else, but there are other elements that go along with that, with these roles that are defined through, that will be defined through the manual. So also like a model user. So think of that as being someone that is helping out someone that has created, let's say someone's developed a corridor model and they need help on transferring some information or tying other corridors to something. Model user could be one of those people that helps with that. And again, that could be someone from your production staff that is helping do that. So the how to use manual, again, it's here. It really kind of goes through some of those objectives. So as you all are using this manual and you look through this and you're like, oh, well, what about this? I'm not really sure what to do about this, and we have not covered that in the manual. Please, that's the kind of feedback that we want is, okay, I need to know how to do this, but it doesn't really tell me anywhere what chapter I should go to or who the audience is and how I get to that point. So again, this manual is to help with best practices. It's to help move forward with the new CAD standards, with the new software, with how we deliver projects and how those are organized and pulled together. We're not changing how plans are put together. We're not changing any of those things. Plans are still what the governing document, specifications, our cost estimate. That's still the governing document. What we're trying to do is really move into and help provide more information on that digital design standpoint because of the efficiencies and more collaboration with that, and really starting to focus more on our design than we are on other things that may not matter as much. So with that said, that's really kind of going through chapter 1 as an overview of this. So I want to open this up to anybody that has any questions. If you do have any at the beginning of this, please ask those now, because when we do dive into chapter 2, I think that is probably going to take up the rest of our time for the meeting. What we'll try and do is take a break if we need to, kind of halfway through. But before we start into chapter 2, I do want to see if there are any questions as far as the overview of the manual and kind of what the intention of it is. All right.
I think somewhere
Sure.
in one of the earlier pages, like workflows were mentioned. Is that like an appendix to the manual, or like for the specialty groups and things like that?
Yeah, so as far as the workflows, are you talking like as far as how the CAD standards are being utilized and how we are doing the modeling and the design?
I don't know. One of the pages had like boxes, and the specialty group one referenced having workflows and processes in this manual, but I guess I don't know what all of the chapters are, so I don't.
Sure. Yeah. So for the intended audience, this one,
Yes.
and hear about workflows and processes. So through the manual, we will go through workflows and processes. You're going to see, like in this next chapter, chapter 2. So the document management, we'll get into folder structure, where things go, where files go. Also the file naming, we'll really start getting into those things. How files need to be developed, how they need to be maintained, how that all works. And that's even just from a global standpoint. But as far as specialty groups go as well, we get more into that into chapter 3. We actually go through each specialty group and talk about the CAD standards and what some of those workflows are. And again, we do that at a high level because this manual is intended to be from a best practices and what to expect and what to do moving forward. We have videos on, and Sahar, I don't know if you want to provide, if you can provide that link. I don't have it off the top of my head, but there is the videos that we've done. We're also doing the additional trainings coming up. We'll also be doing more trainings as we keep moving forward. Those videos and those trainings that we have those are more of the how-tos. This one's going to provide more of the high level workflow of, from a CAD standards point, what should I be pointing to? What should I be using? How should I be referencing? Or what should I be referencing? Those types of things.
So this manual, to summarize what Jeremy is talking about, is provide the best practice on how to look for and guide you through as you go through your project, design phase of your project, all the way. Then the asset management part. The intent of this is to provide, like Jeremy said, uniformity across the regions and unify the process on how you look and you work as a team on what's the responsibility of each team who is part of the project team. It's a training per se, but it's a guide, best practice. We are focusing and we will continue to focus on providing you training on each those, so help you, guide you how to maybe create in the future your design model the best way and stuff. This is just like a guide. The benefit of it is to provide uniformity, as Jeremy said, also to get return on the investment, like for example, how we name file, where we store, how we manage data and file in a way that it can be shared and also extract for asset management data, so you can use it for the next project and future project active project. So that's basically what it is. What we have here is building the awareness and the knowledge about that. We will build the training and knowledge also as we continue to implement the process and implement that CAD digital design deliverables. Mitch?
I'm okay, Sahar. You guys nailed it.
Okay. Okay, good.
I don't need to interject myself.
Yeah,
Sorry
don't
about that.
don't think about that as training. It's not a training. It's a best practice. We're introducing you to best practice, and training will be provided a lot in the future for you to cover those.
And what we're trying to provide out of this, again, we know that the manual that you all have currently with the 2011 is outdated. It points back to data into a separate area versus your your graphics, your line work into a different area. And what this is doing is it's bringing those worlds together, and it's also, like you can see on the screen, the appendix of how we're trying to move forward, but also giving like the project deliverables checklist. This goes across through every specialty group. What it does is it provides information that will go into deliverables, your plan sets, anything else, as well as like, for instance, let's say for drainage, have I checked my flows? Have I checked my analysis? Are my pipes or my flow arrows going in the right direction? Are my end sections where they need to be? Just different things like that, of different checklists for everyone. And again, it's providing the information that's available. What we tried to do was cover as much as we possibly could. It doesn't mean that you're going to use all of those things. What it does is it provides information depending upon your project and what those project needs are, so that even in that deliverables checklist, I may have 100 things that are in there that I could check. A lot of those I may not check because of my project and what I'm actually doing. So that's really what this manual intent is, to help give everyone guidance on utilizing not only Bentley software, but also utilizing documents that you all are using. So even from your forms, your 1299 forms, the 859 for construction deliverables, just being able to help with those things. Again, this manual is not telling you how to do those things. And a lot of places too, when we get into right-of-way information, survey information, we really make sure that we cover that at a very high level here, but refer you back to those manuals, because those manuals are what is going to help you move forward on, okay, what does this file need to have in it? What does it need to include for that deliverable?
And Jeremy referring to manual, meaning the training, our custom training manual, where we are updating to reflect and match what we have here. Daniel has question, what determines? So we will be posting the first draft. What you're saying here, this is our first draft, and we will continue with training and piloting, and then we will gather information from you, feedback, as we're working with you guys in the next task order next year, FY27, and we will update, reflect those comment and feedback, lesson learned into the second draft. The following year, also when we implement the process of digital deliverable and stuff, we'll continue to work with you on training and support, user support, and getting feedback and fixing stuff that we missed or something need to be altered or updated. And that's how we will be updating that CAD manual. Does that answer your question, Daniel? Perfect.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. And I kind of just popped this up on the screen without really telling anybody, but what this is, so this is basically going to be your table of contents. So it just kind of shows everything that's going to go into that. So, all right. So let's go to Chapter 2. So I want to dive into this. Again, we'll probably take a break. I don't know, probably like around 10, maybe somewhere around there, Sahar, if that works.
That works. Do you want me to stop the train and stop the recording and or no?
No, I think
Okay.
we'll just keep rolling it for
Perfect.
now. Again, with So chapter 2 is probably, not that the whole manual is not important, but this is going to set your foundation of the whole project. This is, in my opinion, the most important chapter of the manual itself. This really starts to walk through not only our CAD standards, our digital delivery standards, how files are used, how files are put together, different types of data management, how that's pulled across, how that's separated, and then how it's also, I'll use the word federated. We will get into that as well. But really, and I know Jen can attest to this. This is something that I preach across the board of, if you have a good foundation, you've set a good foundation, and you have managed your data correctly, it's only going to make your life easier. You're going to have less crashes. You're going to have less time wasted on trying to find different things or find files. One of the things that I want to caveat is this isn't just about ORD, any of the OpenX products, OpenRail, OpenBridge Modeler, OpenBridge Designer, any of that. This focuses on that, but it also, a lot of this folder structure and the file naming also pertains to documents that you are also using, your reports. So drainage reports, structural selection reports, geotechnical reports, pavement reports, different things like that, and how the files are named are very important. And we'll get into that of why. But again, this chapter is probably the most important chapter of the manual and will help set that foundation. If anything, I would say as you all start using the manual here in the summer, is really use this chapter for back and forth, because we do point to a lot of different things in here. So procedure on this. So this goes through what those deliverables are, what we're planning on using those for, and how we progress in the next few years. So again, what this is doing, and that was probably something I should have hit on the overview. Again, we're in that hybrid world. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're setting up, okay, we understand that we know plan specs and estimates are our governing document. That's what we work towards. But as we work towards some of those digital deliverables and working with the end construction piece into the assets, is how we develop that information that is used in those plans, specifications, and costs. Really, we have to start looking at those model-based design elements and how that moves forward, how those are tied with the workspace that is provided, with the feature definitions, with information in our elements, and how we develop templates. And templates meaning templates for OpenX products, templates for forms, templates for reports, those different things. The more consistent we are, the more repeatable we'll be, and the easier it's going to be to consume at the end of the day. So that summary in a high level, that's really what I'm talking about. As you all can see, and hopefully you all can read that. I'll try and zoom in a little bit better. Hopefully that's better for folks. But what that really does is, I saw a hand go up, I think. Someone have a question?
And Jen has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
No questions.
Oh, okay.
No.
So the probably one of the biggest things out of this, again, is that and it's on the top for a reason is that enhanced collaboration and communication. Is the more that we're paying attention to how we're designing, how we're pulling things together, and really working with each other, and what information is going to go into elements that's delivered at the end of the day. This really starts to provide more of that with folks, because we're we're actually paying a little bit more attention to the design because then we are delivering those design elements, whether that's a digital deliverable, like a surface for information only, or if that is a plan sheet that is derived from my model, from my information. So as we go down, so again, these are examples. This isn't an encompassing list. This isn't everything that we would be doing that we're talking about, but what we're throwing in here in chapter 2 is a mix of a lot of different things. It's a mix of CAD standards. It's a mix of digital standards, a mix of design standards, as we talked about in the environment review in chapter 1. This is intended to kind of go through what a digital deliverable use is going to would look like, whether that's information only or in a few years down the road, if there's parts and pieces of models that we are delivering, how that works. So again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll touch on like building information models, BIM. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard the acronym BIM before. It's been around. Actually, it turns 40 here this year. So BIM has been around for a very long time. It's been more so in the vertical world of things, and we're really transforming that into transportation, have been over the past more than a decade, probably close to a couple of decades now, of really moving that information forward. So what that is it's really the model-based design. It's the information from a building from an information modeling standpoint, and not to just use the term, but what is used in that, how far I'm taking my design, what levels, again, we'll get into chapter 4, level of development. What geometric information do I have in there? What other kind of information do I have in there? How is that information started and ending? How does that go into my asset? So a lot of these things that we're trying to touch on in the first part, again, a lot of this is informational. It's to get people used to how things are progressing, how the industry is moving, what is efficient, what's not efficient, what helps us have a better product at the end of the day, what's going to save CDOT money at the end of the day, what's going to help with the infrastructure throughout the state. How are we going to move these things I'm going to say in a more intelligent way, not that what we've not been doing is intelligent, not saying that at all. This just provides more information as we move forward. So again, why and purpose of model-based design, really in what is model-based design. So model-based design is really using our design criteria and design intent, and how we portray that from a graphical standpoint, data standpoint, and informational standpoint across the board. If we are looking more at how we are developing what our plans look like, what that's coming from, if that is a derivative of our 3D model, we have less risk. It's more efficient. We have more collaboration because we got to talk about, okay, how is my model developed? What did I put in my template? What is triggering what my end conditions look like? Are my end conditions correct? I can really utilize that model-based information if I'm using that for my plans and as a derivative versus having a separate 2D file somewhere else that maybe the model had changed and the 2D information did not. Those are where we're really trying to get to, is making sure that we are providing a singular reference of that information that we're putting together from a design standpoint on a project to deliver that same information. So Sorry. And sorry you all have to listen to me talk here. So we'll mix that up here on the next sessions. But common data environment, that's one thing I do want to talk about too. And the common data environment, so in CDOT's world means project-wise. That's a common data environment. Where our information, where our data is stored, where we use and open files, share files, those types of things. So our common data environment is where that information lives. And it's where where the workspace lives. So in order to have a consistent, repeatable platform, we have to have one point of where that information is stored. It's very important to use a common data environment. So like in this case, project-wise, I know sometimes it can be cumbersome. I know sometimes it breaks down, as does any platform. But one thing that this does is then that provides a single point for everybody to be able to go to for that information and that data. So when we talk about common data environment, and you're gonna hear the terms quite a bit. If you're not already familiar with it, of CDE, you'll hear that a lot. That's what this is referring to. So in here, that's where we can have all of that information that pertains to that project. So that's really what the common data environment talks about. So it's really important on how files are named, where they're stored, how they're stored, what information is in them. This really helps control that atmosphere. Any questions so far? Scott.
Yeah, do we think contractors will be getting into ProjectWise, or do you think you'll stick with the current system that we put files that are in the 102 spec onto Google Drive, and then RB puts it in the B2G system where they can find it?
I have an answer. I'm going to let Sahar answer that,
Yeah,
though, from the CDOT standpoint, though.
For consulting collaboration, we are preparing to utilize BIC, connected project, and stuff like this that's allow for external collaboration. And that's where training will be on some of the tools that BIC offer. For collaboration on a project. So I believe, and we would like to use these services so we can actually collaborate, as opposed having Google Drive and stuff like this. So we will be preparing for the training and offering the training with the next fiscal year on how to project team, external, internal.
I guess I'm talking more about contractors. When we give this, whatever the digital delivery is for construction, we have to have a good way to give it to the contractors. So right now it's been Google Drive for a lot of stuff, but I know consultants that we're working with will want to have them in the same environment. But I guess something to think about, maybe, I don't want to slow you down, is how stuff to contractors during construction or for the construction.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, Scott. So the way that it works now, right? And we'll hit on that, some of those deliverables for the 102 spec, like you're talking about, that's delivered through Google Drive. That will still kind of be the constant right now. But like as Sahar is saying, what I think CDOT would like to do is, as you guys move forward with ProjectWise, being that common data environment and utilizing that environment in through Bentley Infrastructure Cloud, where you can do your document management control and those things. There will be some piloting of projects that happen in the next few years that work with work with contractors. For instance, like PennDOT right now, they're utilizing Bentley Infrastructure Cloud and ProjectWise as that environment. But there's also through IFC and the industry foundation classes of how that information gets transferred. So really it's over the next few years is CDOT will be working on how that information travels across, and as the technology improves as well, and hopefully we can get to IFC at one of these points to where it is a universal transfer area, it is a universal common data environment that everybody can work in. And again, depending on the project that you're on, alternative delivery versus design bid build, or even let's say it's a write-up project or something like that, there's going to be a different levels of how information is shared, how information is used.
Yeah, sorry, Scott.
Yeah.
I mentioned BIC without saying like Bentley infrastructure, a cloud, which we have here at CDOT, and this provides services include during the design and collaboration and construction. So those services will be enabled and tested, and we work with you guys and we'll use it for all that during the life cycle of the projects. So take advantage of what we have that include the IHC and all that stuff that's we own, and we will actually utilize, take advantage from these functionality and use it for that collaboration, including the contractor and construction team.
Hopefully that answers it, Scott, for you a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, Ahmed.
So just to be sure that I understand the structure of the digital delivery. So let's say the project-wise, it will be the cloud for the CDOT and the consultant team for the design process. And we will use another digital cloud via Bentley or via anything else to deliver the final design or the progress design via that digital platform or cloud for example, like constructability review, or for comments from the contractor, or as a final deliver for the contractor to use these digital plans in that cloud for construction. Is that the correct system or the correct structure that I understand it for this whole process?
In my eventually, Ahmed, I think that's where it gets to is I think the goal. And again, I'll use PennDOT as an example. Just I'm familiar with them and kind of how they're doing it. They're utilizing Bentley Infrastructure Cloud plus a lot of other tools that go along with that for construction projects, where that construction information and that model is within that Bentley Infrastructure Cloud. So it's still your data and your modeling and your design and all of that information still resides in ProjectWise, but that information is shared through the cloud, through information. I think that's eventually where CDOT is moving towards. What we're doing here is this is helping set that information up. So to Scott's point, right now it's the 102 spec. Model deliverables are for information only. It's shared through Google Drive. That's still the process of how that still works. What this does is it starts to, even though we're doing for information only and we're transferring through Google Drive, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing from that design standpoint before that deliverable happens, that we are focusing on, okay, what that model deliverable would look like and how that's a hybrid and a derivative of what our plans are going to be. Does that help? Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Probably will be some on this one, I am guessing. So let me zoom. There we go. I'm going to go into roles and responsibilities now. So project manager, these are roles and responsibilities as we talk from a CAD standards, digital delivery aspect, model-based design aspect, how that information works. Again, chapter 2 is the foundational piece of this is my role. These are the things that I'm responsible for. And again, it's not like this is going to change day one. This is going to take some time. This takes a process of, okay, what the heck is a digital delivery plan, right? So really getting used to these things. We don't expect this to happen like right away. It's going to take some time to get used to what are these things. And really high level, a digital delivery plan is really what am I delivering at the end of the day, and who's responsible for different elements of the project, how those are pulled together, and how that is communicated and transferred. So like those types of things of what those responsibilities are. So PM, it doesn't change your day to day, the invoicing, all of the fun stuff that you get to do as a PM, assigning and delegating other information to your team. So what this does is it kind of takes some of those elements plus our design elements and pulls a lot of those things together. So what we've done is we've said, okay, here's a PM, overall project authority, delivery and ownership. So here are my responsibilities on the side. So really working with my project team, understanding what they're doing, how they're operating, how things are coming together. So again, it starts to, I'll say, enforce more collaboration on the project. It really just, it's very similar, same roles and responsibilities you have, just more of an enhanced way of looking at it. So that's from a PM standpoint. Any questions on the PM kind of role responsibilities there from anyone? Okay. Going to go to the technical lead, digital delivery technical lead. So again, not to add more acronyms to everyone's vocabulary. We do have a list of what those acronyms are and what defines those. That will also be in the manual itself. That's actually I think that's the first thing. So it lists the acronyms and what those are. So as you're going through the manual, you have something that you can refer back to. What this one is. So the digital delivery technical lead, again, the framework, the standards, working with the PM, how are we establishing the project in the common data environment? Most of the time it's, okay, we're going to set up the project. It's tied to our workspace. We have our folder structure, of file naming intact. And Sahar mentioned Bentley Infrastructure Cloud. We're not going to dive into that now, but like that, is there training for that? How, who's responsible for that? This person organizes a lot of that information as the project sets the foundation and moves forward. Chris, I saw you had a question here in the chat. Must be assumptions that a single person fills multiple roles. We do not have, yes. So depending on the project, Chris, that is the case. Is sometimes a one person may fill different roles, but again, it's understanding what those roles are. And then also it's how big is the project? And if those roles aren't there, how do we fill those roles? Is it consultants, sub-consultants, vendors, however else, making a blended team to work together, operating in those aspects. Hopefully, does that kind of answer your question, Chris? I'll go with the thumbs up. So just kind of moving forward again, Any question on the digital delivery technical lead? So again, this can be someone that's again, kind of like project engineer, deputy PM, as we talk about those things. So can be very consistent with that. Okay. Move on to project model manager. So again, I mentioned this earlier. So it says CAD coordinator, modeling coordinator, project engineer, whoever that is. And Chris, as you mentioned, sometimes depending on projects, someone may fill multiple roles on this, and maybe you just identify, okay, I've got a project model manager. They're going to do these things, including DDTLs or however that works. This one more so, again, managing the project. If you have different disciplines, how those come together, organizing the container files, which we'll get into, organizing federated information, setting up the interdisciplinary design reviews, really, again, moving forward with those communications. And again, a lot of these, not all, all of these don't happen without that communication and that collaboration with your PM. So your PM should be involved in these conversations. They may not need to be at every conversation and every meeting, but they need to have an understanding of what's going on and what's happening. Any questions on this role? This one's a little bit more in depth, but again, we kind of put a lot of focus on this, and this person would also be in charge of, again, that Bentley infrastructure cloud for later on when we talk about I models and different things. Okay. Discipline model manager. So again, think of this to specialty group model manager. So whatever specialty group you're in, whatever person is creating that design model and pulling that design intent and information into it, that's what this person's role is. So again, this is your discipline lead, or specialty lead, specialty group lead. That's what this would be. So someone that is responsible for, again, and sorry, Brandon, if you're on here, I keep picking on drainage, but let's say if whoever's responsible for, let's say, that drainage system, they are responsible, they're that discipline model manager. So if they have a team that's helping them with that, work on developing that model, they're the responsible party for how that model comes together. Are the nodes in the right place? Is my system running the right direction? Or is my system sized correctly? Those things. Do I have the right size of pipe in there? Is it outfalling where it's supposed to? That's really what that person's for. Any questions on that? Okay. So design model author. So again, each specific designer or engineer that's working on a model. So let's go to, I'm going to go to Redway because that's mainly my background. Anyone, so let's say that we have multiple corridors on a project. We have multiple, or we have a side street tying into a state highway, or multiple side streets tying into a state highway. Those model authors are those people that are working on those different models that come together at the end of the day that the design model manager is responsible for. So a model author is someone that is working on that model and developing information, developing or the level of development, how far is that taken? Am I going from one specific area to another specific area? How far am I taking that? Is my curb and gutter just a line, or is my curb and gutter detailed out with a section that's available and has the information into it from a fabrication standpoint? So that model author is responsible for those things. Any question on those two roles? Model user. So again, this can be anyone. So let's say a model author has developed a corridor along a street. This model user, they ask, hey, I need help. I need you to go look at this curb return. I need you to develop something in there to make sure that my curb returns are tying into my main line correctly and that I don't have undulations in that. That model user is someone that's coming in that's helping with that. Again, can be anyone from an engineer, designer, production, whatever that may be. That's really what this person, what their role is helping out on that production, helping drive the design forward and moving it forward. That's what that model user is for. So any questions on those roles and responsibilities? Okay. All right. Let's move on to software. Oops. Software and the configuration versions. So this is where it does get in. It's pretty important on how things operate within. This one probably focus a little bit more on the OpenX platforms, where each Open Roads, Open Bridge, Open Rail, Open Ground, if that's ever used by CDOT, any of those OpenX platforms. Open Roads has a specific seed file that goes along with it because of how the schema is written in the background for Open Roads, how it operates, how data is transferred, how data is used. Open Bridge, same thing. Will have its own seed file that is used for Open Bridge, whether that's Open Bridge Modeler, Designer, or whatever it is. Reason being is because those schemas are a little bit separate. I will caveat this one of, if you are in Open Roads and you are working in Open Roads, please work in Open Roads. If there's a bridge model, no problem. Reference that in all day long. Do not open an Open Bridge model with Open Roads, as what that does is that takes Open Bridge and it stamps Open Bridge as an Open Roads file. So any elements that I want to use from Open Bridge Modeler that actually help me make it Open Bridge, even Designer and using the calculations, using LEAP and information that I need to in there, it stamps it as Open Roads, is no longer usable as an Open Bridge file. So please be very cognizant on how are you using those things. There are workflows. I know Sahar is working with Bentley. I know that we are also working with Staff Bridge on some things as far as how that needs to operate so that it makes it better for Staff Bridge, that they're not getting corrupt files and having to start over all the time. We want to make sure that we're just very cognizant of doing those things. So please, in Open Roads, just use Open Roads. Don't open an Open Bridge file with Open Roads.
Yeah, Jen, I want to add one thing. Also, I noticed, or we have had a Mojo ticket that's result of folks, project team working on a project, but working with mixed version of Open Road Designer. This is also we want to avoid, like when we have the project ready and created in a project wise and is using ORD 1012, the consultant need to know that version we're using because it's working with a workspace, and also we don't want 1011 and 1010 and 1012 in working. Those mixed version can cause a lot of, due to schema change as well, can cause a lot of issues.
Correct. Very much so. And to answer your question, Laurel, yes, reference these files all day long. It's just the opening effect. So same thing that Sahar is kind of alluding to. You will get a message that says, do you really want to upgrade, or do you really want to go from Open Bridge to Open Roads? Do you really want to do these things? Most of the time, the answer is going to be no. So if you get that warning, please be very cognizant of what that warning is and if you should open it or not. But as far as referencing, I can reference any of that stuff all day long. That's not going to mess with anything. I guess, and I wasn't planning on going through each and every one of these. That was really kind of the biggest thing that I wanted to hit on, is the software and configuration versions. Through that is one thing that because of the workspaces and because of the features and how they're defined and how they're used. So an example I'll give is like guardrail. So in the workspace of 1010, guardrail is identified as a specific feature in 1010. 1012, that same guardrail may have a different identifier. So if I open a file from 1010 to 1012, that guardrail may not show up because it's not in the same workspace and it's not talking to each other. That's the importance of those. That's when you'll run into some of those issues like that. Really just wanted to make sure that was the main thing that we kind of hammered on as far as software and configuration versions. So Melanie, to answer your question, depending on when your project was set up, how it was set up and working with, if you're the PM or if working with the PM, that version of Open Roads would have been set up at that time, whether that is 1010 or 1012. More recently, it should be a 1012 version. But if you're working on an older project, that may be a 1010 version. There are times that you will switch versions over, but again, that's a process that needs to happen within CDOT. There are specific rules that need to happen in order to do that. But the version that you would be in is what was assigned at the beginning of that project. So it could be a 1010 or it could be a 1012. I think, sorry, you correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the only two versions that are allowed right now, right?
Yeah, yep. So every time we announce CDOT roll out a new version and we put out an announcement, any project after that date will use that version. So it depends on when the project is created. The latest now we are using is 1012 update 3. We are working right now, wrapping up the work on the 2024. That will be released next, and still working with OIT on the installation package and stuff. Tentatively will be rolled sometimes in June, hopefully next month, but that will be the next version. Once I send out the announcement and work with OIT and they make it statewide installation package available, then that date, anything after that, any new project created will use that 2024 version. That's how it goes. Yep. I see 2025, started this effort with 2024. Talked to my consultant, they say not much different. We can skip to 2026. So CDOT doesn't upgrade every time Bentley upgrade. We cannot do that. So every year, 2 years, we will go to the next, and now we are planning to do the 2024 coming up soon, hopefully next month, and then we will work on either 2025 or 2026. We'll see the difference. We will evaluate the software to see which version we would like to move you, because we would like to move you to the best, but there's not best. Every version has some issues.
Mm-hmm. And to vouch for Sahar on that too, because the question on 25 is, it's very difficult for any organization to stay to par with Bentley on those exact versions as the changes in the workspace and the updates and everything else that go along with it, of making sure that those are operable for the users, or as operable as they can be for the users. So it takes a little bit of time, and sometimes those bugs are worked out, like in 2025. That
Mhm.
maybe 26 is a better version, so that's what you start working towards. So hopefully that kind of helps answer that question too.
Yeah, there's a lot of lists for when we send the SR, like an issue we find we flagged out, Bentley will not guarantee which release, but eventually they will fix.
Cool. And it looks like, Corey, that Brennan has an answer for you. So
Yeah, 1012, but you have the use third license. Okay.
so I think this also probably answers some of those questions on the project use, kind of just that same question that was asked about deliverables and upgrading to different versions and things like that. So project use, that's really what we've just been talking about, is really paying attention to what you're using and how you use it. Depending on that project. So digital format requirements, what this covers, so it should look somewhat familiar, at least as far as like electronic data, 3D model data, XML files, spreadsheets, things like that. What this represents is this basically represents an example of what would be delivered in the 102 spec as for information only, of our PDF plans, specifications. Those things are going to be delivered no matter what. 3D model, again, for information only at this point, talks about the different open roads, open rail, open bridge files, your existing topography right away, proposed right away, and then all of your models that are being used from a 3D standpoint. And even at this, maybe there's a traffic model in there where you've got a signal and you provided caissons and conduit locations from a 3D model perspective. That could be something as well. Again, we tried to hit an example of what that 102 spec would look like. Right now, the XML files of the surfaces, again, that being probably the most universal. I've had the question on how that's checked, because a lot of times I know contractors will use Autodesk products or Trimble products. So how do I check my surface against those? The best way really to check your surface, like from an XML standpoint, would be creating a blank file, importing back the XML that you've created, and verifying it against your true surface that you have, that you've been utilizing. That's the best way to check those for you all right now, since I know you all don't have the Autodesk or Trimble software to be able to check.
Yeah,
that.
and this practice that Jeremy mentioned has been utilized. I've been like letting everyone know that's how you do it since the Everyday 3D Initiative account, like at 2013, 14. That is a method. At any time, if you're working with a different vendor software, you can just export XML and just have them exported back, and so you can see what's missing and what's lost. Yep. So actually sending it and sending it back, it is kind of a lot of work. Let me tell you, most recent software now these days, Trimble Business Center and stuff, is like read ORD file and data and same ORD, but this is just a part of QA/QC process. Verification, verifying your data, what you submit, and making sure that what they have is not lost, is part of the QA/QC. We used to have that QC process in the past, and I think it's good to bring it back. That will eliminate any error in a design that's moved into construction later on.
And yeah, Laurel, to your point, there's methods to be able to make that a little bit quicker, more efficient. But the end goal would be, okay, having the construction, the contractor having the use of just that original surface, how it is, versus having to do some back and forth and different things there. If there's a way to just keep moving that data forward without having to have a little hiccup in between, that's really kind of the goal moving forward. But it is a little bit more cumbersome, but there are methods that can be used to help mitigate that, as far as like different symbologies and checking methods against XMLs. So some of those things we can go over in the how-tos and items like that.
Yeah, those are a very important process. Checking the data is very important, especially at the beginning and at the end, on the construction beginning of your work and end. Like the previous quality assurance document used to have and ask everyone as a best practice to get the existing and to get the alignment of the existing and the terrain of the existing, see what's going on with the existing and cut cross section. That is the first step before you start anything else. And same thing with the construction, that's part of your QA/QC process.
Yep. Hopefully we answered everyone's questions well, on at least up to this point. I think what we might want to do is just take a 10 minute break for everybody, because I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get to the folder